Hello and welcome. My name is Ryan with Landscape Builders Hawaii. In this video, we're going to be following along a recent build that we did at our job site here in Honolulu, Hawaii. As you can see from the views in this video, we're above the city of Honolulu on Mount Alani Heights, which is a mountain ridge, and we're building an amazing outdoor grill with poured-in-place concrete all around to match this modern designed home. We worked with the client to come up with this design, and we do a rough drawing with dimensions in Vectorworks on our computer, and then we have a 3D rendering made, which gives the client a really good idea of what it's going to look like in the end. For the purpose of this video, we're going to skip a lot of the forming and the pouring of the footing just to expedite it and show the fun part, which I think is the pouring. Basically, here we are. We have a footing already in place. As mentioned, I like to build all my forms off-site, off of the design, and kind of have it like a big puzzle that I just put together on the job site, which helps reduce a lot of time on the job and expedite the process for the clients. So you'll see in these next couple shots, we're basically just putting together this big puzzle. Everything's pre-ripped, which takes time because we're using form ply, and everything's marked. And basically the only things I have to really adjust on site are some small rips. I leave everything a little bit long or high so that if there's any variances in the footing, it can be easily adjusted. We're using a combination of fiberglass and steel rebar on this job. Here we are drilling in our rebar dowels. I like to dowel after the footing is poured, just in case there are small changes or the layout needs to be tweaked a little bit. Just for example, in this design, the client is also a contractor, and he had once he saw the scale of the forms, he wanted to adjust how it was positioned in this mature landscape. So that by doweling later, it gives us a little bit more flexibility, and it really doesn't affect the structural integrity of this. It's not a big wall that's retaining anything. It's a freestanding unit, so it's no issue at all. One thing I did notice about this fiberglass rebar is it has no bending capability. So when you're placing it in your dowel holes, you got to be really careful about how it's positioned, and do a little bit work with a little bit bigger diameter hole and line everything up so that everything's plumb and not touching your forms. Here's one of the biggest advantages of this fiberglass rebar is it's so easy to cut on site, and it's light too. So in this part, I was tying it all by myself, lifting a whole bundle off the truck, and at the end of the day, it just reduces the labor and you're not as tired. So we do use a rebar tire. This is the Max twin tire. It's super fast. It makes tying rebar easy. Anybody on the crew can do it, which is really nice, and everyone just seems to really like it. So we're just tying the mat around the internal walls before we put in any internal form so we can get it tied. We're going about 8 to 12 inches center. Everything's 6 inches on this build, so I tend to put a little more than is probably needed just for mine's sake. We attach all our forms with Tapcons or screw bolts into the concrete footing. This is just a plate being put down where our internal form is going to be screwed to and adjusted for the height. Back on site here, we're going to pour today. We're just tightening up some of the formwork. You can see we've gotten a lot of the formwork finished up since the last time all the rebar's tied. We're now just adding some extra bracing. It's always good to be safe. Take the time now to do it versus when it's pouring and we have a lot of vibration and a lot of pressure of the weight. This countertop and structure is 6 inches everywhere, so it's a lot of weight and force when we start putting concrete in. Here's just a couple quick shots of just the overview close-up of the formwork. You can see the rebar is all tied. I also have a lot of bracing going on. I always find myself adding a little extra bracing on the morning of when I wait for the concrete. Maybe it's nerves or just last minute checks. Some of it's unnecessary. People that help me pour on different jobs kind of tell me that, but it's always good to be safe. Our formwork all braced off. We are we like to use hex head screws. These allow us to take off the forms really easily. When concrete starts going off, there's a lot going on, and all this formwork is going to come off today so we can finish it so it has a nice smooth finish. So using these kind of screws allows us not only to find it, but concrete's not going to get stuck. They're not going to strip, so that's important. We have a lot of edging or a lot of bracing on edge. We're trying to basically keep the formwork as straight as we can. We have kickers with turnbuckles on them. This allows us to make adjustments when we're pouring. These forms are heavy, and naturally wood is not perfect. So what that does is it allows us to mechanically move it with a turnbuckle. Everything is planing out to the plan. We have a slight slope that's going to take water off of the countertop away from our cabinetry that's eventually going to be under here. So right now everything is just being final looked at, bracing. If you come in here, you can see our rebar work. And as mentioned before, we have a combination of fiberglass and steel. The steel is mainly for the cantilever section. It's a 5/8 bar that's down tied to the bars in the footing, and then it has a bend in it. So it's going to help hold the weight of the concrete and lock everything together. This is our cutout. This is the box that's going to form the grill, and concrete's going to come in, go under it. We're going to take that out today, and you're going to see kind of a skeleton of where the grill is going to go in. It so we can mix it in. So right now we're going to add it to the dry mix, and then we'll mix it up and then add our water. So just to add to that interview that we did while we were pouring, just to clarify, we are pouring colored concrete. So for this job, it was a little bit of a hard access, and there was also a small amount of concrete. So we ended up using a ready mix trailer, which is a towaway. I purchased the material 1 yard dry, just the sand, rock, and cement. I take it to the job site. We mix on site. And so what we did was we added the color we purchased from a concrete supplier. This color was cobblestone, which is like a light charcoal, dark grayish color. We added it on site because then I can control the slump, which is the amount of water and in the concrete, and we like it a little bit on the stiffer side, but a little bit workable. So with the concrete being towed about a half an hour away, we just like to do it on site. It gives us more control. Now here we are starting to pour. You can see that color in the mix. We're just shoveling it in, wheelbarrow, one at a time. The access point is a little bit tight. As we put it in, we're vibrating it. We have almost 40 inches from the bottom of the forms or top of footing to the top of countertop. So we're really making sure we vibrate well. We're using a DeWalt cordless vibrator. I think it's called the pencil vibrator. It's really good. It's strong, but it's not so strong that we have to worry about blowing out forms. We are braced off really good, but it's still not overly powerful. It's just enough to get it going. So we're just finishing filling up the forms. Everything's full. We're vibrating to minimize the honeycombing and pockets. It's consolidating the concrete in, and it's going to allow us, when we take off all these forms, it's going to be a very smooth surface, easy to trowel. So we're overfilling a little bit. We can always take out after we vibrate. The vibration helps it drop because it's consolidating. You can see everything now that it's filled in the forms. Concrete comes, it drops down in this cutout that we have formed. Concrete comes under here, and this is when everything comes off. This is where the grill sits. And you'll see once we take off the forms in the next step, it's going to be removed. And so now we have the concrete forms filled up, kind of like I mentioned in that little interview. We like to overfill it, vibrate it really good, make sure everything settles in, consolidates it. We want minimal bug holes or popcorning, whatever you call it. And that's our method. And then we can always take out versus being done and having to add back. And then this is Elton. He's just rotting it off with a straight edge. Just rechecking everything. You know, you can go over with a float, but it's good from end to end to get it all screeded out. And also really work up any additional cream. The mix was pretty good, but because it's not from a truck, it doesn't have any admixtures in it. So it can be a little bit grittier when you first put it in the forms. So by rubbing it with this aluminum float or straight edge, it's really bringing up and getting all the fines, which is all the smaller pieces of rock and sand and cement. And then he's going to be going over with his fiberglass or resin float, whatever you want to call it, and just laying it down, making sure everything's flat. This is a little bit after it's been poured. You can see one of the cleats. We had cleats across the whole stretch of the counters or the side tables on the barbecue. Once it stiffens up a little bit and we know it's not going to pull apart under pressure, we took those off and he's starting to get an edge. We are using 1/4 inch edge or 1/4 inch radius edge on all the forms. The 1/4 inch in comparison to a 3/8 or 1/2 inch makes it a little bit tighter. More like an inside counter, which would be a square 90. A square 90 is really hard to use. You'll see a lot of the Australians, very high-end finishes using that. We find this is the best for us. The 90-degree square edges, the tools aren't as readily available, and we're just not as good at using it yet. So we tend to use a 1/4 inch, which still gives us a nice, tight finish. Here's another shot, just going over it again, just rechecking again and again, making sure it's flat. Now we're taking off even more cleats. This is as time goes on, concrete's getting harder. We're able to pull off these braces, add some material into the holes that we had under those cleats, and recheck it with the level again. You can see in that last shot that we have a tent over us. We're in Hawaii. This was a hot day. We're working with black concrete and everything's getting stripped and there's a lot of tooling. So because it's a smaller piece, we were able to get a nice 10 by 10 pop up over it and give us some shade. It's pretty amazing how much that little bit helps. We just took off all our cleats or our braces. Concrete's starting to get a little bit harder. So we're able to put an edge on it and make sure it's flat. The braces were there just to keep everything together so the forms don't move. No movement. We want to keep everything as straight as we can. So now it's getting tight enough, but it's still very workable. You can see we're putting an edge on. It's a 1/4 inch edge. So everything is going as planned. And now it's just a matter of waiting. And we'll continue to work it and keep shaping it until it's ready to take these forms off. This mix is probably somewhere between a 4,000 and 5,000 psi. We're mixing on site, so we don't have a set number, but based on the amount of cement we put in, it's a very rich, meaning it has a lot of cement content in compared to the sand and rock. It also has color, so it's very creamy, as we call it, or rich. It's going to allow us a lot of high quality troweling. It's not going to be bony or it's not going to be gritty from the sand. So the more it gets worked, we're going to bring up more and more cement, and that's what's going to give us a very smooth, tight finish to polish later. So this mix was pretty good. It wasn't quite as good as a truck, but we did add extra cement bags like I mentioned, and it did have the color, which helped. but the aggregate was a little bit more coarse and there was less fines than what you'd get from the traditional truck mix, which did end up giving us a little bit more of a hard time, but it was still a good mix. We were able to work up plenty of cream or fines and get a pretty good finish on this project. So here's just some more shots of edging and then floating after you edge, taking out any lines, making sure everything's nice and flat. Here we're adding some corner bars to the cutout. Those are inside corners where the grill sits. Very high likelihood of cracks forming in those inside corners as it dries and just over the life of the barbecue. So we had these, 5/8 diameter fiberglass rebar pieces cut, and we just add them in as it gets a little bit tighter, in addition to the mat that was tied in place while we poured. And you can just see we're floating them back in. The levels are already correct. We don't have to add any extra concrete. We just got to reestablish the height that was there, consolidate the holes, tamp it down like he's doing, bring up some extra cream, and rub the concrete back closed. So here we're starting to take off the forms, taking off those last few screws. We did have a few normal screws, so we had to find those. But here we are taking off the verticals. This was a little bit harder than we would have liked. We were a little behind on our timing, but we wanted to play it safe. We'd rather everything be straight than we take it off and it moves or sags. So the finish was pretty good from the vibrator, but it was tight, and you'll see in this next shot that we're starting to get our vertical edging in, and it was tight. It was giving us a hard time. Luckily, Elton is a very good concrete finisher, and nothing seems to scare him, so he was eager to get that edge in. We thought about not doing the edge, just troweling it flat to the plywood, but we got it in. The nice thing about the plywood is it's a factory edge, because we use a track saw, or we just use the factory edge off the plywood itself. And what that does is it gives you a very square, tight edge versus a traditional lumber that might have a round over on it. That round over creates problems when you start edging and it's tighter, because it's an additional radius to work with. So we have a bucket of slurry that we make, and we add in, once we get our initial edge in and you get that depth in, you can add the slurry and you can cream that edge back in to cover up any rocks or fines that have come out. Leave a comment in the comment section if you want to know how we made our slurry. We have a full bucket of it, and it really helps when we're finishing these types of vertical and facing jobs. This is another form coming off. This is the back vertical. This is one of the bigger walls. We left the two side tables because those needed to get edged and they're a little bit more tricky. But we tried to get the bigger pieces finished first that we knew needed more attention. So this is the back of the barbecue. Eventually the landscaping will be covering this, but it's still nice to get a nice finish for the clients, just in case they don't end up planting or don't end up taking care. It's all sealed up and troweled nicely, so it looks uniform with everything. Now we're just sealing up any little holes. You can see this concrete on the backside was a little bit more workable than that front side with the legs. And I think that was just due to the fact that all the legs were only 6 inches everywhere. This is a bigger piece, so there's more time to work with it. So we're just taking slurry and concrete off the footing that vibrated out of the little gap in the form, using that to fill holes. We're also taking cream off the top of the counter, which got worked a lot. You can use that cream to fill in any holes and butter it all up. When we start troweling these vertical faces, we like to first initially just close up the holes. After we close up the holes, We like to fuzz up the surface so it has some fat left and all those little fines from the sand still on the surface. Try to leave that instead of just troweling it glass tight on the first pass. That way, as we work our way around all the surfaces of the concrete, when we come back to it, there's still some body to it or something to work. If we were to just trowel it and cock the trowel a lot, it might be a little bit too tight and too sealed up to re-hit it. That's just what we found, what works for us. I know everyone's different, might disagree. There's also different site conditions on every job, so whatever works for you, that's what works for us. Here we're getting into some tooling of the nosing tools, starting to work that cutout. You can see it now that the front form is out. That's where the grill will go. Here's another shot of the vertical concrete legs and walls. You can see it's starting to get sealed up. We're using a little trowel to fuzz that up, bring up as much cream as possible. Keep it nice and tight to the factory plywood edges, which is nice. You know that's nice and straight when you're on those. And again, just some more action edging. Here's a close-up where you can actually see after he creamed in that edge, he's actually using the edge of his sharp trowel to open it back up because it was so tight. He had to get some depth for his edger to go in. He's just working it up, working hard. Just good hand workout. Good intense half an hour to 45 minutes when you have to first put in all those edges that haven't been hit. Naturally, down low in the forms are going to be harder when you pull them off because that was the first concrete to go in. So it's going to be harder and softer towards the top. So it's all a matter of timing. And that's one of the trickiest things about these pieces. The taller you get, you have to be mindful of the top, but also be timing it so you can work the bottom. I like to use this Australian float or trowel, and it has all flat sides on it, so you can really rub it like a fiberglass or magnesium float to bring up any cream you need. There's just more and more finishing action. This is Elton doing the cutout. Again, this was covered by the grill. You wouldn't see it, but you know he has pride and he's an artist and he's a perfectionist, so he wanted to get his work as nice as he could. Here's just cutting in some more bottom edges. First couple passes with the edger is just to really open it up, like I mentioned before. Get the radius in, move all the aggregate that's in the way on those forms. After that, as you bring up more cream, you can push in cream, or we can use our slurry that we made in a bucket to close everything up and make the edges really nice. And as time just ticks away, it's just more and more troweling and edging. The surface is going to get tighter and tighter, and it's also going to get smoother and smoother. This is at the point now on this particular shot, we're using a little bit of water in addition to cream just to give the edger a little lubrication so it's not binding or not tearing the concrete. As the concrete gets harder and harder, it's going to want to tear or pull. So you have to either use more cream from somewhere else or our bucket of slurry or a little bit of water just to keep it so nothing's getting pulled. So now we have our face forms on our side tables pulled, and the tabletops were an area where we were putting a lot of our tools and having to lean on stuff to get these edges. So the tables didn't get messed up, but now Elton's refloating it with his fiberglass float, bringing up as much cream, making sure it's flat. You can see it was kind of rough. The sand was a bit gritty in this mix. So now he's just working it back with the cream, pushing down all those fines and sealing up the surface with his trowel. Really just setting it up for later when he final passes it for the final finish. Just trying to get the cream, make it flat, make it pretty. And you'll see he starts doing kind of a circular like sweat motion. When you can rub the float like that in circles and it doesn't pull anything, that's how you know your surface is flat. And again, we like to leave it fuzzy for the next phase or the next step in the process. You can see the concrete's getting tight, more pressure, more weight has to be applied, a little bit faster motions so nothing pulls. And just keep working it. It's like shaping all these bull-nosed edge, radius edge, whatever you want to call them. Just keep working them so that it's a nice dense surface for later on. And again, just to clarify, we're using a 1/4 inch radius tools. So at this point in the project, everything is being troweled. Everything's tight. You're just bringing up as much cream as you can. Here's some more circular motions. You can see that fuzz on the surface. Again, it's in Hawaii, it's hot and it's windy a lot of the time. So if you start sealing stuff, you might not be able to work it after that. So we like to leave it fuzzy, and it gives you something to work with later on. All those nice small pieces of sand and cement are just left on the surface. Here's some more edging work. You can see how tight it is. He's putting a lot of pressure. Sometimes you'll get everything out of the way, it'll be running smooth, and you'll start to hit one small piece of rock, piece of aggregate, something's in the way. So you can see a little piece is missing there, but he's gonna fix that with a little slurry we have in our bucket, and then you're basically creaming that in, and you can roll that edge with the radius of the edging trowel and make it all tight. Here's just a nice shot from a little bit different perspective. You can see it's coming together. You can start to see what it's going to look like. It's always an exciting step for the clients because not everyone's used to looking at form work. So when they see the form start coming off, it's like a light bulb moment, aha moment. You can see what this structure actually is. Now this is the last part of the project in terms of the pouring step. The concrete is so tight that if you were to go with no water, no lubrication, as we mentioned before, it's just going to tear. It's going to open up holes. So we like to go through just a little bit of water. We call it water wiping. And it just glides all the tools over, gives it a last seal, seals everything up. And it also marbles the color because you're actually burnishing the top of the slab. And so you get these natural color variations because the concrete is so tight. It's going to start getting little hints of black from the pressure. And so you can see this close up. You get a little bit of texture, starting to see a little bit of change in the color. You don't have this one tone color. You get this real cool, natural marbling look. There's a shot just right after the last pass of everything getting troweled. It's just curing out now. It's going to be left alone for 10 to 12 days and let it all cure out before we do a light sand and polish it and seal it and put the barbecue in. So this just came out really cool. It's really nice and clean. All our edges were nice and crisp after everything was worked. A lot of details on this because it was all 4 sides and there was a ton of edges. Whereas sometimes there's only a handful of edges, but there was so many edges on this, it had the two of us really busy for a couple of hours. Thank you for watching. We'll be having another video coming out with the final look. We appreciate it. Thank you.